So in this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to start mixing up your own audio tracks. I have a set of recordings here from an actual band that was recorded in a proper recording studio. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull those files into our Studio One, and we're going to do a little bit of mixing and a little bit of panning. So to create a new song, we just click on Create a New Song. Don't need to do anything in this dialog box at all except for hit OK, and then we're presented with our blank slate of our song. I'll just bring up the folder where I'm keeping my recordings. So you'll see there's a whole bunch of different audio tracks in here that pertain to all the different things that were being recorded. And this is called a multi-track recording because each instrument or each microphone within the studio had its own file created of that recording. You can play these by double clicking on them individually. I'm not going to do that now. What I'm going to do is click on the bottom one or the top one, hold down Shift, click on the top one there, select them all like this. That way I can easily drag them straight into my Studio One. And there they all are, ready to go. Now I better check that they work, so either by pressing the space bar or hitting play, I can play those back. That appears to be working absolutely fine. We've even got the clicks of the counting on the drumsticks there. I can solo out certain tracks to listen to, say, for example, just the electric guitar. There it is. Or just the organ. Obviously just S for solo there and M for mute. There's also an S and an M button down the bottom here, which enables me to turn these on and off in bulk, which just makes life a bit easier sometimes. I can check out some of the other tracks, for example the kick drum here. Notice that because this one is a microphone, you can actually hear some of the other elements of the band, and that's called spill. So whilst that microphone's on the bass drum, I can still hear a little bit of the snare drum. I can probably still hear a bit of the perhaps guitar or vocals in there as well. I'll play that again. Some cymbals as well. Okay, and we can play them all together by clicking off our soloing. There we go. Sometimes it's nice to, and one of the first things an engineer might do is just fade in these tracks so all the mics and all the inputs don't all switch on at once, and that's just grabbing this thing in the corner and pulling that in like that. There we go. So if I want to mix one of these tracks or want to edit the tracks individually, I can either double click in this sort of area, which brings up my mixing console, or you can press the mix button down in the bottom right hand corner. And you'll see that at the moment all our levels are even, they're all the same, but that's probably not how you're going to want the song. You might want your vocals a little bit louder, you might want your keys perhaps a little bit to the left. And we also do what's called panning. So when you put on a headset or you listen to most of your home theatre systems at home, you actually have a stereo to work with, or the two sides, the left hand side and the right hand side. And we can push instruments left or right according to where we want them in the mix. Now generally our lead vocalist will probably be pretty much in the middle of the mix because they're the main point of focus, if you like, for the audience. But our guitars, we might pan them left and right. So in Studio One to pan, we just use this little area here, and it's as simple as clicking on that and moving it off to the left or the right. So I'm going to play that so you can hear it. So at the moment you can hear that's fully panned to the left or fully panned to the right. Alright. Now we've got two guitars, so it might be nice to pan one left and pan one right. You wouldn't always pan fully left and right like this, but I'm going to do it just so that you can hear the difference that makes. So let's hear the two guitars together now, panned fully left and right. And you should be able to hear that that's sort of clearer to listen to. Whereas if I have them both in the middle, they're sort of mixed in together. You can't quite tell which guitar's which all the time. And they're really, really quite blended. In this case, the two guitars have a very similar sound, so they're very blended together. So I'm going to stick with my full pan left and right like that. Other things we might like to pan, looking down the list, is our organ. So I probably wouldn't go full left or full right in this case, because then it's going to go over the top of my guitar. So I might go, say, half right. And that gives the keyboard its own little space to work in, if you like, at the half right there. Let's play that. Ooh, I will point out that the keyboard track, which is this one, is actually a stereo track. So it already has left and right elements to it. So what I might do, I might just check that out. I'll put it back in the center. Let's have a listen to our stereo keyboard. It's also got a bit of a tremolo or a rotary effect there, making the wah 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 sort of sound. Alright, we can change that into a mono track by just clicking this here if we want to. We could make it mono and put it half right. Oh, you can hear straight away that sounds more blended now, as opposed to when I split it left and right. I quite like having our stereo track. I'm going to keep that, but I am still going to push it slightly to the right, so it's not over the top of where the vocalist will be in the middle. Okay. The bass guitar, with bass and kick drums and things, you generally want them in the middle. Bass, if you know, in a room, bass is something that spreads very well anyway. If you've got a home theatre system, generally you'll have a subwoofer, and the subwoofer doesn't need to be placed right in the middle of the room. It can be off to the side, because it's sort of this all-encompassing sound that you quite often you can't point to exactly where it is. It sort of goes everywhere. So we keep our bass guitar right in the middle. Let's just have a quick listen to the bass guitar. There it is. Not a particularly nice sound, that bass guitar like that. We might have to do some work to that later. But in terms of panning, I'm going to leave it right there in the middle. Next one, and perhaps one of the, I suppose, well, I think from my point of view, more complex ones to work with, is our drum overheads. So quite often a drum kit will have two mics hanging overhead, and quite often it'll be one on the left and one on the right, and the different sides will show up different things. And I'm not going to pan that. I'm going to leave it right where it is, but you'll be able to hear, if you listen closely, that parts of the drum kit are off to the right and parts of the drum kit are off to the left. I want you to listen closely to this one. So after all that, if I play this, you can hear that the tom, that floor tom, sounds very much off to the left. So I'm going to grab my floor tom track here. I'm going to pull it over to the left just to match the overhead mic. That sounds pretty good. Alright, so we've got currently we've panned out our electric guitars, we've panned out some of our drums, backing vocals. One thing I have found, see, here's our female backup and our male backup. One thing I've often found is that these backing vocals, they sound really good, often panned hard left and hard right. We've already got our guitars hard left and right, so we might go half. So if I solo those two out, let's just hear it.
Living in the city.
There it is.
Living in the city.
Let's try panning them half left, half right and see how it sounds.
Living in the city.
Just much clearer, isn't it?
Living in the city.
I do now have my keyboard half on my male vocalist, so I could just bring that way a little bit. Oh no, hang on. What have I got? Yeah. Maybe we pan the keys out a bit further, bring the vocalist in. Let's try that.
Living in the city.
Cool. That sounds pretty good. And just like with the other track, basically I'm cutting out where this track is picking up spill. So all this stuff here, that's just the mic is still on and it's still picking up sound, but it's not sound that we necessarily want. So I'm just cutting that stuff out, and it will just make our track a lot cleaner, a lot nicer. See all this stuff, they don't actually sing till about here.
Living in the city.
So anything before that we can cut out, and it just makes our track run so much nicer. Here, so we don't need any of this stuff. Here they are again, and I'm using Alt X to split the tracks. Otherwise, you would have seen before. I can go up to here and go edit, edit and split. There we go. Here again, edit and split. There we are. And then here again. If you hold down Shift, you should be able to select both those tracks and split them together, just to save a bit of time. And then these two snippets will cut all that out. And look, all of this spill going into these mics that we just don't need. So again, edit, split, and all of this stuff we're just going to cut out, and it just makes it sound so much nicer. All right, what else can we do here? Let's just see how that sounds. I think that's sounding a bit cleaner already. I will point out with the organ there, try and zoom in on that a bit for you. Is he actually playing here? Yeah, so he's obviously got his hand on the volume dial and bringing it back for certain spots. That's good, that's fine, I like that like it is. Lead vocals. Just mess, spill again. She doesn't start singing until here. So we might grab that track and pull it right up. There we go.
Well, I got hurricane.
There we go.
I'm Big Danny is wasted.
Similar thing with the tom down here. This rack tom doesn't get used much. There it is. So all of this stuff we don't really need. We'll bring that in and we'll split it like we did the other one and bring the mic in and out as we need it. Here's another bit. Let's split that there. Fade the mic in. I'm going to delete this. Boom. Here it is. So, you know, it takes some time, but it's worthwhile. Your track, when you're done, is going to sound so much better for it. I won't do the whole lot. You don't need to see me do everything there. Let's have a listen to the start again. Turn our solos off. Okay, so you can see over the course of 10 minutes or so, we've made our song start to sound a lot more clearer. We've panned our instruments out. So what's in your left ear can be distinctly different to what's in your right ear, and allow your brain to sort of distinguish with different things that are going on. We heard that our electric guitars sounded quite blended when they were together both panned into the center, whereas now we pan them full left and full right. You can really tell which guitar is left and right. We've had a little bit of a look at our overhead microphone for our drum kit. well, there's 2 microphones actually in stereo, and we now know that if you, in your overheads, if you can hear your floor tom a little bit off to the right, then you find your floor tom mic and you pan that a little bit to the right to match, or the rack tom in this case, we pan a little bit off to the right, and try and position the different overhead instruments. What the overhead's picking up, you try and position those instruments in different places using your panning. We know that our low frequency instruments, because that sound sort of goes everywhere, you want to keep that pan in the center, or don't touch the panning rather. So our bass guitar and our kick drum can stay in the center. Lead vocals generally stays in the center because you want that to be your focus of attention. So that's given you a bit of a start on mixing audio. Have a bit of a play around with it yourself, and then there'll be more videos to follow.